episode 44. We've got a double confirmation of the number 4 right there.
Yep.
And, well, we're of course going to start with a quote.
Let's do it.
Let's do the quote. Let's just go straight in.
Let's go straight in.
This quote is from a Lebanese American guy. His name is Kahlil Gibran. Some people say Gibran, Kahlil Gibran. But you can just say Kahlil Gibran.
Kahlil Gibran.
Or Khalil. Because it comes from Arabic, you need to do the Khalib.
I didn't know that.
Khaliba Gibran.
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
I mean,
Wow.
that would be the appropriate thing to do, but it's like...
The thing that I really appreciate is that you take the time to really understand where these people are from, how you would pronounce it, and you do your homework. You know, you see a lot of...
I studied this guy for an hour before we started this cast. He was a poet.
Nice.
He was a painter. He was a polymath of the highest stature.
Yes,
And,
he was very tall.
Yes, exactly. That's what allowed him to do all of these things. And, you know, people called him a philosopher too, but he rejected that notion. He thought he was, playing more than trying to understand.
Definitely.
He thought of himself more of an artist than an intellectual. That's why he rejected the philosophy tack.
Yep, and because he was so tall, because of his stature, he actually used himself as a measuring device. And he was one of the first people to use his body to as basically a ruler.
Such an incredible story. Yeah, if you're into measurement and
he learned how to lay down, mark where his head was, and do movements so that he could perfectly get his feet where his head was.
Exactly, and that led him to the refinement of the actual measurement of what a meter is.
Yeah, that's where the Kahlil technique comes from.
The Kahlil, exactly. Anyway, let's we digress. Starting quote in 3, 2,
1.
Many of us spend our whole lives running from feelings with the mistaken belief that you cannot bear the pain. But you have already borne the pain. What you have not done is feel all you are beyond that pain.
Wow.
I mean, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Should we end the cast here?
That's like, it reminds me of the face yourself thing.
Yeah.
That we talked about, that the solution is not to find the answer, but it's to face the answer.
And that leads you to a higher understanding of the question itself.
Yeah, and it's kind of saying like, oh, if you have a collection of feelings, emotions that you are experiencing, then distracting from that is actually not avoiding anything. But you are escaping, confronting that, and realizing that that's just a front for a truth that you will discover if you actually get in there and use the Kahlil technique and measure it with your body and your mind.
Yeah, of course. Which means that if you engage in that activity, eventually, after measurement, you'll get good enough so that your experience will go beyond the practice itself. And hopefully that experience is a true experience of a true state of being. People call that love, and then people say no, love is just an emotion, a temporary emotion, and that's a whole debate. But
would you say, before moving forward, would you say that that's what you think you uncover. If you face, you do the Khalil technique, you get to the bottom of what is actually going on. Then in the background, there's sort of a substantive layer, a permanent layer of what you mentioned would be love there. Is that safe to say is what you were saying?
Yes, but I wouldn't necessarily decide to call that love.
Copy that.
I guess I just brought up the word because, well, he talks about feelings,
Yes, sir.
and I also think that love is not just a feeling. We do call some feelings of similar to love, but I would say there's an argument to be made for love to be uh, beyond a feeling. But we could also say that's just the sweet elixir of existence. You know, the
Nice. It's the
the
fountain of youth.
and old, the
It's
fountain of
also
young and old.
so my question is what is the and now we've just moved right into the space. This is a different kind of a different wave, but I'm down. What are the how can you make the claim that love is in any way different than the other emotional
Yeah,
let's
sure.
acknowledge or let's see if we agree on this is that we have these categories of emotional felt the feeling of we have these feelings that we have
Hmm.
defined and
Hmm.
it's not clean cut. It's like they're just kind of like you have a collection and of hormonal response and your body and your you feel a change in the biochemistry of your physical body and
Yeah.
that influences your psychological state and the part of you that is observing yourself in the world and it can name that state kind of like this box that we've named or that we've created to isolate one thing from another thing. And the one that feels like this, quote unquote, feels like this, we name this. The other one we name this.
Yeah.
The other one we name this. So first off, we can acknowledge that they're not perfect, but they are categories that repeat and that people generally experience these
Hmm.
patterns.
And we tend to have a common agreement that this feeling equals this tag, and so on.
Yes. Yep. And when you're a kid, you look at like emojis, and there's like a smiley guy, and you're like a happy, and then there's a frowny guy, and you're like a sad guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Of course. So I think that duality of like love, hate, happy, sad,
Yes.
excited, depressed. I think that's limited understanding of the emotional body that we all live with.
Do tell. Pray tell.
Okay, so trying to expand on this, I feel like the we talk of course we talk a lot about meditation, right? And
Meditación.
we've had a lot of episodes dealing with the process and the philosophy and the practicality of everything surrounding meditation. And
Filosofía meditación.
I'm bringing this up because one of the, I guess, benefits of medication, meditation, of medicating yourself with
Yes, sir.
meditative practices
It's a
is
Freudian
to
slip.
transcend intellect and transcend the emotional body. But I feel like that, and yeah, get to that experience of the, repeating myself, the felt presence of direct experience, that
Yes, sir.
exists beyond your thoughts.
Yep. Or in some instances to elevate, quote unquote, yourself beyond all experiential modalities and to just be some sort of unified organism to the oneness.
To remove as many things as possible so that the experience you're having now is as
Uh-huh.
pure as possible. But talking about
Yep.
that pure experience, let's say that's a utopia.
Sure.
The ideal of the perfect meditation is
Yep.
sometimes thought as a white space, is a 0 point
0 point.
experience, something that is. But I feel like it's
Yeah.
closer to a state of like a tearful, like almost about to.
Ecstasy.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like that would be accompanied with a whole, like a full body emotion that brings you to tears,
Wow.
almost even.
Yeah, I would. So I don't want to sidetrack this, but I'm just reminded. I've been reading Microcosm and Macrocosm, a collected works of Robert Flood.
Nice.
And in there's a chapter where he's talking about, he's responding to, I believe, Johannes Kepler on the harmonies of nature. And he's responding, he's saying, look, you're saying that the soul is separate, is a part of nature, and his argument is that the soul is not a part of nature because it is derived from a oneness that cannot be split or measured, and
Okay.
that people's experience, basically, he's arguing that the soul is a oneness that we can experience, but soul as a phenomena is not a result of a division or a measurement that came from a natural process.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you believe or not believe,
Yeah.
but I was just reminded of that and thinking that, in meditation, and it was alluded to, is that if you are meditating, a lot of, you could be saying that you are returning back to the oneness of the eternal soul. And that feeling of reaching that state must be overwhelming in its emotional qualities. So perhaps that is, if that were to be true, I mean, and this is, whatevs playing around, then
Yeah.
that would be quite an emotional experience.
I feel like at the heart of this exploration is a language issue, a definitions issue, similar to the God question. Some people,
There are many God questions.
yes, of course, and I was about to be way more specific about my claim. Some people, when they say God, they mean creator, and some people mean
Yeah.
so many different things, and so you have
They
to
do.
clarify that. What I'm trying to get to is that the love thing, I guess it's way similar. I mean, people tend to also make those words synonyms, God and love. And
Yeah. Yes.
right, and I'm just saying this because I feel like maybe both arguments could be valid, and there's no way to discern either or to make an exploration that will lead us to say, hey, it's actually A rather than B.
I think that's it. It's what playground do you want to play? What playground do you want to play in? And it's like, if you agree upon the definition and you agree that, okay, this is the playing field we're going to play on, then you can do something so as to find a result that is
Yeah, because I feel like right now I could be like, I'm fine with love being just a feeling, and let's call the feeling of romantic attachment or beautiful ideas about someone
it's
else
yeah.
in
It's also
right.
it's also like an acceptance.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
also just like a on a in opposition to the need to want something to change.
Mhm.
It's just like a an acceptance, and that from that comes a relief and a beauty in some sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
But here's the
And there
thing,
there's a
right?
way, I guess I could say, like new age kind of understanding of love, which is love is not the attachment we're experiencing about each other. Love has nothing to do with romance and a beautiful feeling that I
Yeah,
enjoy temporarily. Love is the essence of
oxytocin.
all. Love is electromagnetism that is pulling all of us together, and if you experience the deepest state of meditation, that is pure love energy, and
Yeah,
both could be valid. It's just okay, we're gonna call that love now, I guess.
but
Sure, I
it's
can call that love and explore that thing.
okay. But here's the thing: if that is a fundamental element of the universe,
Yes,
or
universal.
of if it is an eternal phenomenon, isn't all of the other things, like let's say that it's a wouldn't that, how is that different than any other emotional state? Isn't that also just a response to the world?
It is no, it is different because
Explain the difference.
all all emotional phases are not the pure fundamental emotional state,
Why?
because
How can you
most
say that one
emotional
is this?
states are a reaction of a cycle of a psychological process.
But isn't
N-
love also?
Again, I feel like it
And
depends.
couldn't you also argue that the feeling
Yes.
of despair and suffering is the number one reality? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
that's the Buddhist notion. That's,
Yeah.
that's many that suffering and a feeling of despair and unsatisfactoriness is a fundamental and eternal reality. Because
But could you say that that's a fundamental reality of the ego, of the experience of the ego having
okay. So you're saying that the fundamental true state. So the argument here is that
beyond
okay,
intellect?
so we're saying that let's separate again our beings into two categories. One is the ego or the intellect or the person who is observing and trying to know how to exist and survive in this world, and you develop clothes and how to negotiate culture and how to move forward and to do the things that need to materially keep your body moving forward in time. And the other thing is is not concerned with survival. It's a state that you can experience or feel if you practice something like meditation or something. Another part of you that you could call an experience of the soul, or the observer that's behind the observer that's embedded within the ego.
Yeah.
And that one of those places is flooded with the reality of unsatisfactoriness and suffering. That would be the ego. That would be the monkey mind, the one that's trying to satisfy things. And then the step back, the observer that is behind that, or the experience of the soul, wherever we want to compartmentalize that, the uncompartmentalizable part of you, maybe that part is existing within a flood of acceptance and of what you're saying, what this argument would be is of love. Because in
Yes,
that state,
I
there's
can
nothing
follow
that
that.
it's wishing to have, or that state is nothing that it's wishing to be. It just is. And if we're acknowledging that a part of love is the notion of acceptance and of not needing, if that is an attribute that we are putting onto the ego of love, then then it would be the case.
Yes, I believe so. And I guess it's easier to think of love. So this is why I would be down to accept to not call that that pure experience of consciousness love, because I feel like generally love is way more of a temporary beautiful feeling that has way more to do with ego than with consciousness. It's
Wouldn't you say that's the, well, that's if we define it as such, right? That would be playing a different
yes,
ball game.
exactly. But I feel like that's
That's
a
relating
way
it to
more
like
popular understanding.
oxytocin, the love hormone, and
Yes, sir.
serotonin, and dopamine,
And we have a day for that, and we have marketing around that day, and you give flowers to that beautiful person and a gift to a friend, and
yep.
so I don't know, that's I
You
would
want it. You eat chocolate to get even more dopamine and serotonin.
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm also down to be like, okay, if that's love, then let's call that love, and let's not call the other thing love, because
Right.
why are we having the same word for totally different experiences?
And that is um, that's the problem with language.
Except I don't think that's the case. I think we call the intellectual thing love. Well, not only intellectual, it's obviously also the feelings of the chemicals going on, right? As you
Definitely.
just mentioned.
Yep.
But I do believe that the purest state of meditation is not it does have an emotional aspect to it.
See, I don't. First of all, I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay.
And the second thing I would say is, if it has an emotional quality, then who's to say that that isn't the superficial version of love, where you're having hormones release and you're feeling good, and that's literally the other definition, rather than the. If we acknowledge that that's the first definition, the eternal whatever, the underground, the the original, and you know what I'm talking about.
Let's call it the 0 point state.
Nice. If you're talking about 0 point love, or 0 PL, then if you are saying that when you connect to that, you also get the same hormonal and emotional response that you get when you have the SFL, the superfish love,
Yeah.
then what's the difference? Or do they both have? Then when you're meditating, are you having superfish, or are you having zero PL?
But I guess maybe that's why we're having this exploration, and that's why it seems
sir.
like we're talking about two different experiences, but there's similarities.
It's one love, baby. It's
Okay,
different,
let's say
though.
it's not the same.
It's different.
It's not the
It's
same
different.
to cry during a meditation. because you're processing something, which would be, or you go through a guided meditation or
Yeah.
sort of a regression where you're exploring something that you
Okay.
haven't really
Faced.
processed. Yes, and that can bring you to a state of tears, or even like laughing. No, I'm sorry, not laughing, just pouring, laughing, crying your heart out.
Sure. Yeah.
But that wouldn't be
A
the
realization.
a pure state. That's part of
Yeah.
an emotional and psychological process, like a healing process, maybe.
Sure. Yep.
But I think
HP.
that, yes, an HB. But there's a different meditative scenario
Yeah.
where just
Meditative
the
scenario.
just the experience of peaceful, beautiful presence and
Nice.
lack of attachment to ideas, where an emotion starts happening in your heart and you can feel your eyes fill with tears, and it has no link.
Bliss.
It has no link to a history or words, or but there's an emotion it's present there. It's not nothing. It's not zero. And
That's beautiful.
I feel like that's closer to pure, to 0 point
Zero PL.
experience, yeah, than what people tend to think as, I guess, satori in the Japanese
Yeah.
Buddhist realm, which is
Yes, sir.
the time between a thought, stillness, maybe is the right word. Beyond stillness of the mind, there's a full body experience that you can access.
That's so in this paradigm, would you say that the experience of suffering is a phenomena of the intellect, and the experience of love is of the body, and that you get there, that in meditation what you're doing is bypassing, and naturally you will experience the layer that exists beneath the unsatisfactoriness of the intellect, and that is where that there's a kind of duality there.
Yeah, and you cannot escape the suffering state of ego, or I mean, or the fact that ego is always gonna feel separate.
But hang on here. Isn't in this scenario, wouldn't the feeling of, let's say, relief and bliss and beauty and surrender and whatever is that pure notion of when you're experiencing that, like the narrative that we're putting forth of totally being at one with the 0PL, then isn't that your ego recognizing that you are feeling disconnect from the unsatisfactoriness? You're like, oh, finally, I don't have to experience the unsatisfactoriness. So wouldn't that be triggered by a realization of the monkey mind recognizing that somehow you've judoed into 0PL?
Sure,
And
I
it's
think
like,
so.
okay,
Yeah, but because you can't
then that's
escape.
in the mind.
Yes, eventually your mind will be like, whoa, this feels amazing. What is this? And why am I not in this state always? And blah, 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 blah. And that's already separation again. So yeah, it's like a dance, I guess.
But wouldn't the impulse that generates the emotion come from that recognition from the intellect and not a inherent response of the body?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think
You
it's
think
coming
so?
from the. I think it's coming from the mind.
Hmm. Everything is coming from the mind.
Oh, well, it's both. I'm not. Yeah, it's
Sure.
both.
Yeah.
Both
Yeah. I
and.
mean, and I'm not sure. Like, I could say that I've experienced that, but I am not sure if that state was actually a healing process and not the state of
Zero PL.
0PL. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It could just be like I did a pretty good meditation and the set and setting was right,
Yep.
and that was just like a gift, just
Yep.
going into that beautiful experience, and then ego comes and names it something and
Yeah.
etc.
And usually, in those instances where you experience something like that, you aren't zero PL hunting. You're usually, it's just, it comes from like nowhere usually. Or I think it's harder, and this is just maybe it's wrong, but if your intention is to hunt the zero PL, it's going to be harder to experience it.
Yeah, attachment to result will
Because attachment, we're recognizing, is the opposite of
exactly.
zero PL.
That's the paradox. You've
Yeah.
gotta not want it so that it happens.
Yep.
If you want it to happen, it won't.
Yep. So now that we've created this this map of these different states, the zero PL and the everything. Do you think that's true?
Not really.
Okay.
It's what we make it. No, it's not what we make it through language.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily dependent on our speech. So I feel like
Because I almost feel like that feeling, zero PL, is almost a feeling of peace rather than love.
sure, and I could vibe with that. That's why I kind of wanted to be clear about if we decide to call that some other thing, I have
Yeah,
no
right.
problem. Yeah.
Is the language. Yep. Yep.
Um,
But then at the same time, like, I also disagree with compartmentalizing the definition of love as being the oxytocin driven, commercialized kind of shallow version.
yeah.
I also think that that's incomplete, and it's like it doesn't do any good to compartmentalize it into that framework either. I think that because then that's what it is, and if you're saying if that's what so
Because I think you can experience a
and it's definitely not peace. If you're saying the true version of whatever quote unquote we're saying is the true version, that's definitely not peace. So I think that it's a different thing. It's a different thing, And I guess you could argue that within the peace that you find through zero PL, you are then the door is open for you to experience TL, true love, baby. One, praise God.
yeah, and maybe that's where this idea of love is the universal language comes from. We can find mutual understanding with people with totally different backgrounds, different languages, different color, different.
I thought it was
different
music.
everything. Even I thought it was music too, but I guess maybe it's the same thing because music is related to rhythm, and that's related to the heartbeat, and that's where you feel.
And that's related to the harmony of nature.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's the same way that rhythm can connect us beyond language.
Yeah, dude, I think
Love
this is it.
can connect us. Yeah.
I think this is it. I think the harmony of nature and harmonizing and being in tune and the notion of reflecting back to the world the nature of itself is could be explained as being in a state of love,
Which would be
which would relate to music, which would relate to one connected
exactly,
language, which would relate to 1PL,
which creates a feeling of understanding.
0PL.
Yeah, 0PL. That creates a feeling of understanding between almost everyone on Earth. A feeling of
Yep.
similarity rather than differences. And if you're living on ego, it's all differences. We're all different
Yep.
in so many ways, and so we grow separate from each other,
Which is also
so
true.
which is also true. Yeah.
Um,
So maybe this is why we tend to call love both of those experiences. The oxytocin love, and also the love is the essence of God kind of thing. Yeah.
and this relates to the notion of that man is the measure of all things, or the notion that within a human being is a fingerprint of the of everything in nature, and that to get your mind or your experiential part of your body to be reflecting that reality is going to result in a state of harmony / 0PL, and that music is a tool and meditation is a tool that can be, and even
Relationship.
shallow, yes, relationships can be a tool for opening that door to experience the reflective, harmonizing reality of a truth, which is that we have within us the same reflected, beautiful nature that is the external, and that would be microcosm, macrocosm, and a
Nice.
harmony of those two things. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think then, okay, what do you think would be a better idea? To stop calling attachment, love, if you could make any of those things happen, which one would you choose? To stop calling oxytocin love and just call it romance, and everyone would be in the same page as love is the 0 point conscious experience, or the other way around. And or I could also say, okay, if I could have it my way, let's not call 0PL love. Let's just stick with love being the red heart thing.
Sure.
And this thing is let's just
real
call it
thing.
pure consciousness or whatever.
0PL.
Which
Yeah,
one would you rather have?
I think that making me choose is
Then okay, let me ask this question.
I
Do you
think
think
it depends on
eventually we will figure this out collectively?
I don't know. I think it depends on the context and what you're trying to communicate. I think I would rather choose that people acknowledge how they are representing something in the context than to decide
Love
totally
that, bro. Yes.
what
Nice.
the thing is.
That is so smart for you to say, bro. That was like the
Thank you,
best
brother.
answer. I'm not
Wow,
gonna go A or
nice.
B. I'm gonna go with
You're the one that
X.
keeps getting a halo over your head on the.
that is God's pure love enlightening me
Wow.
in this
Nice.
conversation.
Yeah, the energy is spiraling up like a vortex of your torus field and causing a light bulb to metaphysically light up above your head.
Nice. I can feel that. I can feel it's my body is all tingly.
Nice. Hey, this what? How long have we been going here?
About 40.
Nice. What are your So thoughts. I feel like we progressed through this pretty smoothly,
Smoothly, yes, I agree.
and
No
you know,
friction in this
I
one.
think it provided a lot of things to think about and to not think about if you're trying to get that 0 PL.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, that's the paradox. If you, as we pointed out, I guess that was like a beautiful moment for me in this cast, realizing that if you want it to happen, it won't happen.
Yeah.
If you've got an attachment for the direct presence of what? The felt
Felt.
presence of direct experience, the
Yes, sir.
FP of DE,
Yep.
then you won't get there. You need to somehow
Yeah.
figure out how to let go of the result and be.
Yeah. Force is the kryptonite of 0 PL.
Yes, you can't force it.
Yeah.
And same thing as love. You can't hurry love, as the great American philosopher Phil Collins once said. You can't hurry love, bro.
Yeah.
You just have to wait.
You got to play your drums and
Love
let it
don't
come.
come easy. It's a
No.
game of give and take.
And love is all around us. And it's love is in the air tonight.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the convo. This was
Likewise.
a very enjoyable cast. And
I hope everyone finds love in their life and without looking for it.
yeah.
Nice. If that's the thing.
0 PL, everybody.
0 PL, everybody. See you in the next
0
one.
PL, and I'll see you on 45.
All right. We are out.